Moments of inspiration mixed with time to network, IBJ Media Events has you covered. From industry deep dives to awards celebrating Indiana's top leaders, see what's coming up and reserve your seat at ibj.com/RSVP.
This is the IBJ podcast for the week of May 25th, 2026, brought to you by Taft. I'm your host, Mason King. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. When I do research for episodes of the podcast, I sometimes like to check our archives to see how many times the guest has appeared in the IBJ. Santiago Jaramillo has been the subject of, or at least mentioned in, 44 articles, including several columns he wrote for us about entrepreneurism. The stories largely appeared between 2013 and 2021, while he was building, running, and exiting two Indianapolis-area tech companies. After the second firm, known as Emplify, was acquired for $50 million in 2021, Jaramillo had a severe case of burnout. He went on an extended sabbatical, planning to forego any future forays into founding startups. Then ChatGPT dropped. Suddenly, entrepreneurs and executives had widespread access to artificial intelligence tools, and Jaramillo quickly saw their potential for transforming businesses and the workflows of their employees. The pull eventually proved too great. Jaramillo co-founded a firm named Pragmatico to help companies make the leap into AI in a way that sticks. In this week's podcast, Jaramillo takes us on his entrepreneurial journey, which began in Colombia, South America, where he narrowly averted a kidnapping. His career took turns through Florida, Indiana, and Australia before settling back into the Hoosier state. Jaramillo also discusses how he decided to get back into the game, the reasons why many firms have trouble adopting AI, and why the technology shouldn't be set loose without human judgment as a guide. Here's our conversation. It's my pleasure to welcome to the podcast Santiago Jaramillo, the co-founder and co-CEO of Pragmatico. Thanks for making time to talk today.
Happy to. My pleasure. Thank you.
It is great to see you again. I think we last spoke in 2015. I don't know if you remember this. We were on the roof of the Odyssey building in Broad Ripple. And IBJ's tech reporter at the time, Jared Council, was doing a feature on conspicuously young tech founders and CEO. And you were still CEO, Blue Bridge. You were 25 at the time. So I want to congratulate you now for being a not so conspicuously young CEO.
Yeah. Oh, I got to tell you, Mason, I was just talking about this the other day. It is so much easier doing this for the third time. My goodness, the amount of empathy that I have to my 20-something-year-old self that had never had a manager, before in my life, jumping straight to, I think at the high point, leading 70 people, in an organization. And boy, is it really hard the first time you're doing it. You're just really figuring stuff as you go along. Now, I'm still learning every day, but there's a clarity and a wisdom and a groundedness now that just makes this new CEO journey just so much easier. My goodness, how hard it is to be a CEO in your 20s. You really don't know what you're doing.
So some listeners might be able to tell you're remote for this interview. Where are you right now?
That's right. I'm in Medellin, Colombia right now. So I'm originally from Colombia. I was born to Colombian parents, and we left the States when I was 10. And so in the past few years after exiting my last company, my coach asked me a question at one point, which is, what did you lose in your entrepreneurial endeavors? You put so much into it, you gained a lot, but what did you sacrifice in pursuit of professional excellence and doing something that, most 20-something-year-olds aren't doing? And I reflected on several things, but one of them was my Colombian roots and my Colombian heritage, right? I wanted to assimilate as much as I possibly could into, American culture and my language. I lost my accent because I fully assimilated, and it gave me such great gifts professionally and personally to do that. But I also lost a lot of, my Spanish was starting to go a little bit. I was starting to struggle to speak with my parents, and their native tongue is in Spanish. And so it really started to affect things. And I realized I wanted to reconnect back. And so I spent a couple of months a year back in Colombia now to reconnect with those roots.
No kidding. Well, your family moved, you and your family moved when you were 10 to Florida, is that right?
Yeah, that's right, to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Yeah, we narrowly escaped the kidnapping in our hometown of Cali, and a year later, so that happened when I was 9, and then a year later, it took us a while to get the visa figured out and everything, and so yeah.
Tell me that story. I know a little bit about it, but not enough.
Yeah, sure. I had been reading Robinson Crusoe. The Swiss Family Robinson is what it was, the book, illustrated children's edition. And I got obsessed with being on a tree house. And I said, hey, Dad, let's build a tree house. Dad obliged. We're building this tree house, all natural materials. We got palm fronds from like the river and brought them, and they were drying out. And if you know anything about building tree house with palm frond roofs, is you've got to get them on while it's green, or they dry out and they start to crackle, and then it's not waterproof anymore. So it was a Sunday, time to get ready to go to mass. What we did every single Sunday. I asked Dad, hey, can we skip church today and finish building the treehouse? Dad's like, you got to ask Mom. She's the church attendance keeper of the household. And Mom was in a great mood that day. We skipped church today, 30 minutes in, we hear gunshots really close by. The church was diagonally across the street from our house. We could see it about maybe 400 feet away. So we go up to the third story of our house, look over. My dad is concerned because he knows that these are not car backfirings. These are gunshots that are close by. And we look, and there's a camouflage trucks, 2 of them, sitting outside the building. This is May 31st, 1999 in Cali, Colombia. And what ended up happening was the largest mass kidnapping in Colombian history. It was 120 people got kidnapped that day. The leftist militia groups came in, told everyone that they were the army, that there was a bomb in the building, and that everyone needed to evacuate, put everybody, men, women, children, grandparents into 2 trucks, and basically shipped them into the jungle. The kids were let go about 2 hours away, and so they were, returned safely. But most of the moms and dads were kept for many months. There was no proof of life for many months. People had to sell cars and houses to pay the ransom to get their loved ones back. Everybody eventually came back, except for 2 or 3 people that died that day. There was a few bodyguards of some narco people that went to the church that put up a fight. And it was a sort of thank God that we were not part of that kidnapping. I would have to have spent a lot more time in therapy than I have if that had happened with my parents being in the jungle for months. But that was really close to home. My mom was like, they're kidnapping children. This is crazy. We got to get out of here. And so we moved to Fort Lauderdale. My parents gave up their business, their life, their friends, everything to give my brother and I a better life. And that's informed a lot of my motivation, entrepreneurial motivation to do something great, is to make that sacrifice worth it. I think there's a lot of immigrants that feel that they owe a huge debt of gratitude to their parents that sacrificed so much to give me a better life. And for me, I wake up every day with a zeal to make the most amount of the opportunities, because I think in the US, we take a lot for granted in terms of the opportunity and the safety and the system of law and the legal system and everything else that exists, and the economic opportunity that there is. And as much negative press as there is, about the US, some of it obviously understandable, it still is a tremendous place of opportunity where most people in the world would kill to be able to have an opportunity to do that. And I feel that sense of responsibility to do the most with what I've been given. Mm-hmm. And that's fueled a lot of my my motivation to do what I've done.
When you came over, did you speak any English?
I went to technically a bilingual school, so I knew words, but it's as bilingual as you probably took some Spanish lessons in middle school and high school. And so you think and then people start talking really quickly. I remember the first day of school in 5th grade in South Florida, and the teacher says, blah, 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 homework. And I was like, oh boy, I know I have homework, but I have no idea what she said. Oh, wow. So here we go. And so luckily at 10 years old, there's still a lot of linguistic neuroplasticity in our brains. And so I was able to pick it up rather quickly. And the bullying around my accent really helped to lose the accent quickly.
How did you get interested in technology?
Yeah. So I've always been an entrepreneur. Literally started my first little side hustle business when I was 7 in Colombia, delivering water to my neighborhood. And so I've just always I express my creativity in business, in entrepreneurial endeavors. I really feel like business is my art. I'm able to, I think, see an opportunity in the market, in the world, something that's broken, something that's coming that people aren't quite yet knowing that they're going to need a change that they need to overcome. And I just express my creativity in a business way. There's other outlets for my creativity as well. I play drums and a few other hobbies, but I did a music summer camp when I was in college, and I got involved in Exact Target in Indianapolis as an intern during college, and that really opened up my eyes to what was possible in terms of the magnitude of business that could be built, the magnitude of impact. How you could have an amazing culture and place where people wanted to work. And so it was really entrepreneurship I was already sold on and doing for 15 years before that. But it was Exact Target and that ride and that environment and those people that really made me realize, okay, not only do I want to be an entrepreneur, but technology entrepreneurship is quite the opportunity in terms of the magnitude of impact that you can have was very inspiring to me.
Let's take a quick step back. How did you end up in Indiana?
Sure. I went to Indiana Wesleyan as a university. I had never been to Indiana before I visited the college. I didn't know a single person in Indiana. I just did a college tour, and I had a church in high school that was associated with that university, and I visited and just really liked it and took a leap and stayed there, for a really long time.
Now, most folks who listen to the podcast probably have an idea of what Exact Target was. Off the top of my head, I always refer to it as an Indianapolis-based digital marketing company. But what did you do for Exact Target?
Sure. I did competitive intelligence is what I did.
Now, that's some serious stuff.
Team.
Wait a second.
It was super cool.
Why were you doing competitive intelligence?
Sure. So Exact Target had competitors, and the marketing team wanted to support the sales force to know how to position against a particular competitor. And it was really difficult for the sales reps to be always up to speed with exactly how do we differentiate when we come up against this competitor? What do we say that wins the deal? What new features are they coming out from? So I would essentially stay on top of all of competitor news. I was an expert on their positioning, on their messaging, on their product. And then I would send out a weekly newsletter about what was going on with Exact Target's competitors. And I would help individual sales reps game plan how they could approach the particular deal they were working to win against competitors. So it was amazing because it was so strategic, because you have to understand the product, the market, the technology, the pricing, the messaging. And so it was really like a little mini CEO internship for me. And it was really wonderful.
Were you still in college?
I was still in college.
So what was your last year of college? Just a long internship at Exact Target? You went to Australia, didn't you?
I did. So I started to work in the office. Then that internship ended. And I did a study abroad in college in Australia. I ended up dropping out of college temporarily there for a semester, much to my parents' chagrin. I just didn't really fit with the program abroad. And I found myself in Australia with no roof over my head and nothing to do until my flight left 4 months from now. And I read that same week, I had read a press release that Exact Target acquired a reseller in Australia. And so I just wrote the president of that reseller and said, I have headquarters experience and I happen to be in Sydney, Australia, where you're at for the next 4 months. You just got bought by this company that you may not know. I would be happy to help. And I am basically free all day and all night. And so I took my stuff to a hostel, bought a suit because they had a more formal dress culture than Indie Tech, and showed up to work on Monday and worked for Exact Target Australia for the next 4 months, commuting to the Sydney Central Business District every day, and had a lot of fun. And I worked on their partner program there.
Wow, how fortuitous was that? That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a wonderful experience.
So we're going to head into an early lightning round. Santiago, the entrepreneur. I've got a few companies here. Just quickly tell me what the idea was and what happened with these companies. In the archives, I found that you were the founder of U.S. Music Camps, 2009 to 2011. What was that?
Yeah. Yep. So I was 15 and I said, hey, Dad, I need $20 to take a date to the movie theaters. And he was like, what do you mean you need $20? Go get a job. And I was like, what? What is this? He's like, you're old enough now. Go to McDonald's. Like, go get something. Go to McDonald's and I interview, and they were like, I don't know, they're like paying like $5.25 an hour or something, whatever it was there. And I was insulted. And I was like, $5.25 an hour. My time is worth more than that. So I literally like declined to continue with the interview. Just so arrogant, and went home. And he was like, "How'd it go?" And I was like, I'm worth more money than that per hour." And he was like, "What do you mean? It's minimum wage? You're 15. What else are you going to do?" And I said, "I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out." I'd been playing drums before, and so I took drum classes, and I knew what drum teachers got paid. And I was like, I could teach. I was 15. I could teach 10-year-olds drums. And so I spent my life savings, that's at that point, printing 800 flyers, canvassed my whole neighborhood, and got one drum client. $25 for 2 hours of classes. So more than twice McDonald's. And that he referred me to his friends. And all of a sudden in high school, I had a full evening of teaching music to kids, drums specifically. And then I said, what if my brother's friends in his band could teach them? And I just did the sales and marketing. So I found the customers, they taught it, and I don't have to teach anymore. And they did that. And I took 20%, and it worked well for everybody. And then I said, how do I get big groups of kids all at once? And so a summer camp, you can teach 50 kids music at the same time. And so before I entered for Exact Target, my college summer jobs were setting up rock music camps for kids, where they came in not knowing anything, and they walked out 6 weeks later knowing an instrument and a recorded CD of them playing in a band, with their camp peers. And I had a lot of fun. A lot of kids still write to me, now adults, that say, "This was where I learned music. Thank you for that gift." So that was wonderful.
That's amazing.
But I was always scared to misplace a child, because I was in college and we had a few hundred kids. And I was like, this is a big responsibility. I'm not really sure I want to be responsible for this many children's lives during the day. And so technology seemed a little bit lower risk than caretaking for children.
Okay. And then 2011 to 2017, you were CEO and founder of Bluebridge. And we briefly mentioned that before, but tell me about Bluebridge.
Yeah. So we did the Visit Indy Android and iPhone app. That's what we do. So we hosted tourism apps. I found out that visitor bureaus were spending millions of dollars to build visitor centers off the highway to hand out print brochures in 2011. And I said, surely this is not the best way to connect with the millennial audience. The millennial audience is on smartphones and apps. You should meet your audience where they're at. And so instead of handing out flyers, you should have a mobile app on iPhone and Android phones that people can understand what they can do once they're in Indy or in other destinations. So we became the largest tourism app platform in the world. It had over 300 different convention visitor bureaus that powered their mobile applications off of our platform. We also did that for churches and a few other industries as well. So it was a mobile apps as a service.
And in 2017, there was, I don't know the best way to describe this, it was like a partial exit where two elements of Bluebridge were acquired by two different companies. But sort of the what I take was the core of Emplify, which had been kind of a recent development for Bluebridge, went on to be Emplify by itself.
That's right. We started to do mobile apps for internal company use, so for employee engagement use. That side of the business absolutely skyrocketed and became our largest best-selling, and we were adding so much more value there. We decided that we wanted full focus on employee engagement. We sold the church and the tourism divisions of the Bluebridge business, rebranded to Amplify, specifically focused on employee engagement. A year later, we realized that the app that we were doing wasn't solving the most important problem for companies, but it was rather they didn't understand how engaged their people were, and they couldn't put a metric and a number to the culture of their business. Culture is such a fuzzy thing, but it's so important, but it's so hard to measure. And so we were able to give a metric to CEOs and C-suite teams about how engaged are your people, and be able to put a number to it so that they could intentionally create strategies, measure the success of those strategies, and basically have a culture KPI that they could do. And so that was a wonderful ride. And it taught me a lot about change management, taught me a lot about culture, taught me a lot about leadership. Wrote a book with Todd Richardson called Agile Engagement, but ended up being a bestseller in Amazon there for a few weeks. And I went on a national speaking tour on basically helping baby boomer CEOs know how to engage a millennial workforce, which fundamentally comes to work with a different set of expectations from their work and their employer than other generations. And so it was about how do you adapt your leadership in the way that you run a company when now millennials are the largest swath of the workforce at that point. And so that was what that was.
Yeah, and this was a super attractive idea for investors. I think you raised more than $22 million in venture capital. Is that right?
That was between Bluebridge and Emplify. Yeah, it was about, I
Okay.
think, 12, 13 million on Emplify specifically, but you're correct in that Bluebridge and Emplify total.
Okay. And then I just want to make sure I get I referred to you correctly in terms of Emplify. You were CEO and co-founder.
That's right.
Is that cool?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
In 2021, Emplify was acquired by a San Francisco-based human resources software company called 15Five. Is that the right way to refer to it?
That's right.
Yeah, for $50 million. Great exit. How do you make that decision?
Yeah. For us, we had articulated a 5-year vision at that point, and we had already known 15Five for years. I knew the leader there, really respected him and the culture they had built. And the pandemic really forced a major accelerated consolidation of the space, meaning it was really hard to be a small independent vendor into HR because they were so overwhelmed with just reacting to everything with the pandemic and work from home and virtual and all of that. And so we just looked at our vision. We said, we can accelerate the vision that we have for our clients way faster if we joined forces with them. Our clients were asking for performance management, and they were the leader in performance management. Their clients were asking for employee engagement, and we were one of the leaders in employee engagement. So we basically, 15Five had an Emplify size hole. Emplify had a 15Five size hole. And so we knew that together we would deliver the most client value, and that all our employees got raises, when they went there. And so it was really great because I felt like, employees, clients, and investors were going to be best taken care of with us together, pulling together to be a much larger company with larger resources and the ability to be more competitive in the market together.
How did you
honestly, Mason, though, the other reality though is that after 11 years and 2 pivots, I was also pretty tired. I mean, you could say burnt out is an actual sort of psychological condition. And I just didn't have the legs to look at another 5 to 7 years, and didn't have fresh legs to say, I can give this 120%. And the business, the mission, I think really deserved a leader that was all in. And I wanted to be all in so desperately. But when you're burnt out, it's not a lack of willpower. It's just an emotional state. You've got to give it some time to heal from, really. And so I had never experienced anything like that in my life before. I mean, for me, it was everything up to the right, waking up every day energized to go to work. And then it was just like the tide just went out, and it was just, I just didn't have the same level of passion and enthusiasm. And I'm someone whose passion is a core asset of what I bring to work. And that was pretty evident to me and other people around me that I no longer had that. And so it was multiple signals really all coming together to say the business needs a new chapter, and I need some time to figure out what happened and how do I get back to my excited, highly motivated self.
How did you feel after selling the company? I assume that it's one of those things where you just get hit by lots of different emotions.
Yeah, this is very common with business founders that sell their businesses. This is also common with professional athletes. I don't compare my achievements to necessarily to an Olympian, but you hear this a lot. I won my Super Bowl. I medaled at the Olympics. I did the thing that I set out to do, the dream that I had as a kid, the thing that I worked 70, 80, 90-hour weeks for so long, that I sacrificed blood, sweat, and tears for. I had finally achieved it. And you hear this from post-exit CEOs all the time, and Olympic athletes and NBA players who won the title and retired. It's a deeply rewarding feeling of achievement, of I've made it. And it's also strange to finally achieve what you've always wanted and realize that, yes, certain problems do get solved with financial windfall, but also, and certain insecurities get band-aided over because you proved everyone wrong and you got your chip off the old shoulder, but you still have all the internal junk in your mind and heart that you used to have. And before, you could distract yourself from that stuff by just forward progress and keeping busy and being addicted to winning the next milestone. And all of a sudden, it all quiets down and you don't have as much to do and you're not as needed. And you really are faced with that inner critic, those internal voices, those trauma, whatever you want to call them, they're still there. it didn't magically give you the peace and the joy and the calm that you thought that it did. And so it's a very, very disoriented feeling. And the other thing too is you have such clarity of direction of my North Star. My whole life was organized around how can I be the very best CEO every single day and add the most value to this company? And so that single organizing principle kind of made life, it didn't make it easy, but it made it simple in the sense that I knew where I was going and I knew my GPS was very clear in a direction. Now I sold the business. Where am I going? I achieved what I wanted to achieve at 31 or 32 or however old I was. Now, what do I want to be for the rest of my life? What do I want to be when I grow up? What do I love doing outside of working? And so, I had all the same inner junk I had before, just another exit under my belt. And so that was, it was multi-layered, and that's a little bit of what it felt like.
So after this deal, you were a senior executive and member of the board for 15.5 for about a year. But that sounds like it's one of those situations where, you're there for a certain amount of time to kind of ease the transition, but you weren't looking at that as a permanent thing.
I was open to it, but I kind of knew I was pretty upfront that I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I'm not a VP at a 300-person company. And so I was pretty clear about who I was, and I didn't think it was going to be long-term. So, the year was exactly my commitment to them of helping transition the business over. And pretty quickly, we both realized that I was not going to be a great employee. I'm pretty unemployable at this point.
So am I, but somehow they keep me around too.
Yeah.
So if you look at your LinkedIn profile, May 2022, it says sabbatical. So what did sabbatical mean to you?
It just means I stopped working. I stopped. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a professional pursuit. And I intentionally carved out. I just want to acknowledge the privilege in being able to take 10 months off without work and without income. But I had the opportunity to do that. And I said, I had read somewhere that it's wise to give yourself a little bit of time in between things to really close a chapter and till the field and let the field rest for a season. Mm-hmm. And that's what I wanted to do. I know I wanted to sort of get back to healthy, both physically. My physical health had taken an impact. Exercising, I hadn't been eating well with all the sort of stress and the hours that I was spending. I had forgotten what I enjoyed other than working. Sort of my interests and my life had narrowed to be one-dimensional in terms of work. And so I really wanted to take some time to do some of that inner work to figure out what do I want to do next and how do I want to do it? And if I want to do it again, how do I want to do it differently? And how do I tap into that source of vitality? I think that's really the best word to use is vitality. I had lost vitality, this connection to a sense of aliveness in my life. And things had kind of dulled and kind of felt a little bit black and white. So I stopped working for 10 months and I worked on myself as my professional project, if you will.
Sure. And then starting around March 2023, I think for about a year there, you're doing executive coaching.
Yeah, I did it actually for 3 years.
Okay.
For me, having an executive coach was really life-giving and very accretive and valuable for my work as a CEO. It's a very lonely job as much as one doesn't necessarily want a tiny violin. Oh no, you're CEO. How hard can it be? But it's a lonely, stressful job at times. And having someone who you could really confide in, who had been there, done that, was a really helpful sense of support. And so it was basically a way to take care of my 20-something-year-old self by being that sort of helper and support mechanism to other people. And I also did it across so many different industries. I had only really had meaningful business experience in tech, and I worked with car washes and senior care, CEOs, businesses that I had no idea about, but I realized the CEO problems are pretty much the same across industries. They're leadership problems, they're emotional regulation problems, it's people management problems, it's your own psychology, challenges. And so it was really beautiful to learn a lot of different industries, and also just the commonality of the challenges is actually more common than you'd think across industries and business sizes and types.
All right, let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsor. This is the IBJ podcast.
Taft Today's modern law firm. At Taft, we cultivate a highly respectful, transparent workplace that fosters creativity, teamwork, inclusion, and diversity. We couple our culture with a client-first approach, rewarding lawyers who understand their clients' goals and work to deliver success. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
Building a home or looking to upgrade what you already have? That's where Indie Grills comes in. From fireplaces, outdoor kitchens, to entire custom patios, we bring everything together to create spaces designed for how you actually live. We work directly with homeowners and partner with custom home builders to get it right from the very start. Are you looking for inspiration? Our massive showroom on the Zionsville-Lebanon border was built to help you see what's possible. So when you're ready to elevate your space, head to indiegrills.com and connect with our team.
All right, we're back with this week's episode of the IBJ podcast and my interview with Santiago Jaramillo about deciding to dive back into life as a founder and CEO after trying to stay out of the startup space.
So somewhere in here, the seed of Pragmatico starts to take shape. What was that?
So I was really not wanting to start another business. I mean, I had sort of retired from baseball, retired from business building. I didn't see why I should sign up to go to war again for another 10 years. That's what it felt like to me is if I don't have to go to war, why would I sign up for such a hard journey again? I mean, it's very rewarding, but it's also very challenging. And I did not want to do it. But two things happened. Number one, my energy came back, my sense of vitality came back. And number two, ChatGPT dropped. And at first I used it and thought it was total garbage because it mostly was in the early days. But my mom came to me and she was like, "Hey, can you help me with she had a English speaking job. She struggled with her English. And I helped her do some translation work with ChatGPT, very simple use case. And then I showed her how to use it. And then a few weeks later, she was an entirely different person at work. And she no longer needed my help to correct her emails. She became an early ChatGPT user in her early 60s, and it changed. So for me, it gave me this sense of, wow, this is going to change everything. If it's changed my mom's life and helped her not fall behind, that's a really meaningful thing. I started using it for my coaching practice, and it started saving me 5, 10, 15 hours a week. I started to do things that I couldn't do before for my clients. And I started to just say, is everyone else seeing what I'm seeing? Can I help you? Because you're not using it, but this has changed my life. It's changed my mom's life. And I started to teach my CEO friends, typically in their 40s and 50s and 60s, how to use the technology, and their mind was blown by it. But then 6 months, a year later, I would ask them, how's your company doing in adopting AI? Mm-hmm. How is this making an impact for everyone else who doesn't have the funds or the connections to have one-on-one coaching with an AI expert like me? And they would all say the same thing, we're really not doing well. We know we got to do better, but it's a hard thing and we don't know how to figure it out. And so that's really where it started for me, is that planted the seed, and it's evolved quite a bit since then.
So for a while, it was like a side project.
Yeah.
My understanding, it was basically workshops and consulting.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
That's right.
How did you decide to go all in? And as you say, go back to war?
I remember the moment where I was in last fall in Cozumel, Mexico, and I was scuba diving. And normally scuba diving is a sense of complete presence and flow for me. I'm just completely engaged. I don't remember that the above water world exists. And I remember having to rush back up to the surface because I had an idea for Pragmatico that I needed to write down before I forgot it. And so it was not my choice, Mason. It was the idea, and the problem and the mission captivated me so much that I would spend my discretionary time. My mind was just fascinated by the idea. The connection happened. I wasn't excited about a training workshop and AI consulting business. I really wasn't. The idea that took hold is that AI is not a technology problem. AI adoption is not a technology problem. It's a people and culture problem. The technology is there. The technology works. But why aren't organizations actually getting the value from it. It requires asking people who have done their jobs for 10 to 15 years to completely rethink how they do their job, to engage and learn a completely new type of technology that we've never seen before, that makes people feel scared that they're going to lose their jobs, that makes them feel dumb because I don't know how to work it, that asks them to have the creativity to know how to use it. Like any other technology tool, it's supposed to do one thing and it does one or two things really well. AI does like an infinite number of things. And so you have to translate all the things it can do to what things are helpful for me today in my job. And that's different for every person in the company. And so it's really a habit problem. It's really a behavior change problem. It's a deeply psychological resistance problem that people have around this. And for me, when I look back upon my life, like my core thing that my immigration journey taught me was this one word called adaptability. As a 10-year-old kid, I couldn't help the violence that was happening in Colombia. I didn't make the decision to come to the US. External factors that I had no control of happened. I was now in a new country. My choice, my agency is how do I respond to that change? Do I resist the change? Do I resist learning English because it's easier and more comfortable to speak with the Spanish-speaking immigrants and friends, that just came off the plane like me? Or am I going to do the hard, scary, uncomfortable thing of face the change head on, accept that it's here, and use it as a competitive leap and as a competitive advantage? And every business that I've had has been around big changes coming, mobile apps, the smartphone changed everything. How do businesses respond to that? Emplify was millennials are here in the workforce. The old command and control model of leadership no longer works. How do you adapt your leadership for a new generation? And then with Pragmatico, it's now we live in an AI economy, increasingly so. How do organizations respond and become excellent at adopting and transforming themselves, individuals, and their key workflows with what's possible now with AI? The payoff is huge, but most organizations are really struggling. Even in 2026 right now, Mason, most businesses are really behind. They maybe have bought some tools and given out some ChatGPT licenses or Copilot licenses. Maybe they've done training. Usually they delegate it down to a committee, an AI committee that's supposed to figure out AI. And they don't really usually have the title or the authority to actually make decisions and change things. It works just as well as AI culture committee as well as culture committees used to work. You delegate culture down, and what do people do? They plan happy hours on Fridays. And that's well-intentioned, but it doesn't do anything when management isn't trained to be managers, people's job descriptions aren't clear, and you're underpaying people. Happy hours on a Friday are not going to change the core issues. And so AI committees right now are what a lot of businesses are doing, and they're just not working right now. They're not making the progress that they need to be making. And so Pragmatico ends up being their guide on how do we train your people to use AI? How do you change the culture to embrace and reward and incentivize and support AI usage in responsible, skillful ways so that you avoid AI slop? And then how do you transform how you do business, given what's possible with AI? And right now in the mid-market, what enterprises do, Mason, is they hire an entire AI department with a chief AI officer and AI engineers and AI change management and AI trainers. The mid-market companies, 50 to 1,000 employees, they don't have millions of dollars to spend on an AI department. So nobody owns it. Everybody owns it, so nobody owns it. And so we basically come in as their fractional AI chief of staff, help the right groups have the right conversations, come up with a strategy, come up with a vision, train their people, prioritize their AI roadmap, and give them the bandwidth on our end to execute it. So we're basically like a fractional outsourced AI department for the mid-market because they can't afford a full department of hires like the enterprise does, and the mid-market is falling quickly behind.
Yeah, so there's definitely a particular category of client. It's a mid-market style company.
And these are not tech companies. I mean, we work with Indiana Farmers Insurance. They're a 100-plus-year-old mutual property and casualty insurance. We worked with Sapper Miller, a 900-person accounting firm. We work with Prime Hospitality Group. They have amazing hospitality concepts. And they have the Ruth Chris at Ironworks. And so these are not tech businesses. These are traditional employers who don't have usually a chief technology officer in-house or something like that can help them with their AI journey. And so it's a tremendous opportunity. We've got Indiana Farmers Insurance to 91% daily active adoption of ChatGPT Enterprise. And that has transformed their business. We get notes every week about people saying, wow, I resisted this and I feared this for so long. Now I'm using it at work and it's completely changed how I work. And I also use it in my personal life. And I feel like I'm no longer falling behind. I feel like I can actually talk to my kids about AI and I know what they're talking about and I can add value to the conversation. And that's a wonderful human impact that we're having as we get to upskill thousands of people. I think the best antidote to not getting replaced by AI is embracing AI as an individual and becoming so indispensable because you have the human quality and expertise and you know how to use AI. That's the best way. And none of our clients have done mass AI driven layoffs. They're growth companies. They want to just maybe hire less people in the future, but they want to elevate their existing team's quality of work from a lot of admin grind and long week hours to more strategic, creative human work that's higher quality and more valuable for the organization as they delegate the admin grind to AI.
Are there some use cases that are pretty common across the board?
Yeah, we've actually come up with these. We call them the Pragmatico 7. And these are 7 use cases that any knowledge worker, so anybody that works in front of a computer, can really leverage out of the box. We didn't come up with this ourselves. Actually, our clients did. And then, we record all our client conversations. And one day on a weekend, I asked Claude, hey, what are all the use cases that cut across all of our clients? Like what have all of our clients arrived at in first principles in terms of how they're using it that applies across roles? And it told me what it was because it scanned hundreds of hours of training, calls with our clients. And so a couple of examples. One of them is the morning daily brief. So this ChatGPT or Claude is connected to your calendar, your email, your Teams, your Slack. Every single morning, it scans your calendar and says, you're meeting with these 4 people. And by the way, you've had these conversations with them on email and Teams. Here's the agenda for today's meeting, and here's the background that you need to remember. And by the way, remember that Mason loves lacrosse. Remember to ask him about that because he said that 2 years ago, and I in the transcript remembered it.
Yeah.
And so it helps me prep for that meetings. It tells me these are the most 5 urgent and important emails in your inbox, and here are the 2 teams messages that you need to respond to that day. And you get a daily email at 6 a.m. So imagine having an assistant that spends 3 hours from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. to prep that brief for you, except AI does it in 5 minutes and you get that email in the beginning of the day. Another one that's close to my heart, if I can share one more, is the coach. Yeah. It looks through all of my transcripts of all my meetings, all of my messages and emails, and gives me coaching at the end of the week. Here are 5 things that you did really well as a leader. And here's 3 ways that you can improve as a leader this week and how you showed up. You shared feedback in this way. You used emotionally loaded language to share feedback. Totally unnecessary. Here's what I would have said instead. I'm like, oof, yeah. As a coach, I only have an hour with a client and I only know what they tell me they need to work on. AI is basically auditing everything I'm saying and writing and giving me coaching based on that. I find that a really valuable assistant for me.
What are the most common barriers that you encounter when you come in and try to persuade people to adopt this?
Sure. So at the organizational level is nobody owns this. IT owns the tools, HR owns training and upskilling. The CEO has a vague vision of we need to do more AI stuff and build agents, but they don't. The COO is like, I need to transform my workflows, but I'm looking to IT and HR to lead it. And so it's like the Spider-Man meme. Everyone's kind of looking at each other to lead it. And so nobody really does it. So that's like the main thing. And nobody's done this before. And so this is the first time people are going through AI transformation. And so people describe it this way. Executives say, it feels like my exec team is in a dark room and we're searching for the light switch with AI and we don't know where it is. And we're just grasping at straws, throwing spaghetti on the wall to see what sticks. And we know there's landmines. We know that if we get it wrong and we do the wrong thing, it could really backfire. And so that's a difficult situation. Dark room, landmines, you can't see them. You don't know where the light switch is, but you know that competitors are coming and they're moving fast and you got to find a light switch before you step on a landmine. This is a bit of a pickle. And so that's one of them. The other one is employees are afraid. They see AI layoffs on the news all the time. And so they fear that adopting AI is actually going to put them out of a job. Another one, the biggest thing in our surveys we find is, what's the use case for my role? I know that AI can do all these wonderful things. How do I use it specifically with my work for my role? And who can help me figure that out? And that's really the number one blocker at an individual level, is the skill, the habit, and also being able to find those individual use cases for them. So there's organizational blockers, and then there's individual blockers, and that's what they struggle with.
So who eventually does have to own AI in a corporate structure?
Sure. I think it's different people own it at different levels, right? The CEO has to own making a clear decision that the organization needs to go on an AI journey and really approach it seriously, that we're not going to dig our head in the sand, but that we're going to do something about it, and we're going to elevate it to the priority of our annual ROCs, annual objectives, annual KPIs. They've got to create strategic space for it, to resource it and invest it. They have to cast the vision for it. The CEO doesn't need to own the implementation, the execution of it. We typically see that what we do at Pragmatico is we facilitate an AI steering committee that's typically represented by the CEO, the head of technology IT, and the head of HR, and then the COO, CFO. That group is the best AI steering committee group. But the two most important bits there are the IT technology side and the HR side. And so a collaboration between those two folks ends up working well. But essentially, we become for our clients in the mid-market, we become the fractional chief AI officer, if you would. Not that we're making decisions for them. So I like AI chief of staff better, because we're more facilitators rather than decision makers, because it's their business. And so that's ultimately the role that we take in the mid-market businesses. But the two most involved parties are CEO at the vision level and IT and HR to do that. But ultimately, you got to have clear single person accountability, for it, or else it doesn't really work super well.
If you came to IBJ and you'd already talked to our owner, and maybe you were doing a meet and greet, the folks in the newsroom would tell you almost immediately, we don't trust AI, because we know and we have seen many cases where it's delusional, or it just gives us incorrect information. Why should we trust it?
Yeah. We work with AudioChuck as well, and they have an editorial team and a fact-checking team, right? Accuracy is very important with them. KSN, accountants, tax returns, audits, right? These are Indiana farmers insurance, regulated claims, people die, getting car crashes, lawsuits. These are important, quality issues. And so part of where we start is at the AI vision. We helped a company articulate an AI vision and an AI policy. And as part of that vision and that policy, we make it clear that individuals own the work that gets outputted from AI, that individuals, meaning you have to fact check your own stuff. You have to verify. AI is a tool. We can't just turn our brains off and just send stuff that's like AI generated you would never do that with an intern and then send that report to your boss without reading it and fact checking it. And so it's less about outsourcing our thinking to AI, and it's more about the human staying in full control of the quality and the verification of it, and using AI as a tool. Then during training, there's things that you can do, which is, hey, got it. You gave me this response. Now I have a project that's a trained fact checker, and I want you to go through this and verify it. Give me the sources, rank the sources by legitimacy. Give me the verbatim quote of where it came from. If two sources disagree, give me that report. So there's a way to actually use AI to check AI's work, but ultimately the human retains the final verification, layer. That's why I think that replacing entire teams like that with AI is foolish, but augmenting existing teams' human judgment with AI, that is where most of the opportunity is. I think that's actually where a lot of the press has it wrong, is it's not about automating entire functions and just having the bots run it. That would be crazy. If you've used AI, you know that it makes too many mistakes to hand that off to. But a skilled human who already knows how to do the job, skillful at knowing how to use AI and verifying and fact checking, that's really powerful.
So again, as you came here to IBJ, we love policies and processes. I would assume that for every company that they have a different set of values, and that you have to come up with a custom set of rules, a custom usage policy based on what their values are. Is that correct?
That's right. Correct. Yeah, we intake their values, their mission, their organizational org chart. We do our own AI research on the teams and the roles that they have, and we come up with a custom, bespoke AI vision and an AI policy for them, right? For Indiana insurance, it has to bring on regulatory aspects of insurance. For Cat Sapper Miller, it has to bring in their regulators that are different in their laws that are different in the accounting space. And so for us, it's a pretty services heavy engagement with our clients, because now obviously there are shared patterns across our clients that we learn from and that we apply. But where we start, Mason, is we start with leadership training first. Leadership should articulate an AI vision, a really clear, simple AI policy, and that get trained themselves first. Leaders should lead by example. Leaders change culture. Then we roll it out, the AI training, to the rest of the team. And it's not just AI training. It's training plus homework. We grade the homework. We create leaderboards. We gamify it. We provide extra support to those that are falling behind. People have to share their screen in trainings, everyone, and share their best use case with each other. So there's like peer pressure and accountability. Leadership gives awards out for people that are doing it really well. It gets baked into performance reviews and promotions. So there's a lot of work that needs to get done to really embed AI into the DNA of the company in a way that it sticks. And most companies just don't know what that playbook is. And even if they knew what that playbook is, they don't have the bandwidth to really create the plan, execute the plan, monitor it. And so they basically, hire us to do that for them.
I'm a little fuzzy on the timing, but I know that within the last year, you brought on a co-CEO. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, Randy Stock.
And
that was a huge lesson for me of how people ask me, how do you want to do differently this time? You burned out the last time after 11 years. How do you want to do it differently this time around? And for me, having two co-CEOs was, to me, I didn't actually fully decide that I wanted to do Pragmatico until Randy came on board. I know that I am the visionary. I combine patterns. I can speak on it really well. I'm great with clients, but I don't love managing people. If I'm fully honest, it's not my skill set. A CEO should probably be pretty good at managing, people. I'm also not great at keeping the trains running on time and really integrating all of the departments together to work well together. And so I realized the reason I burnt out, one of the reasons, is I was not trying to do two jobs, kind of the outside COO or CEO visionary, and also play COO integrator at the same time. And I just got to know myself and accepted myself of like, I'm really great at these things. I'm pretty garbage at these things, or I can be good at them with a tremendous amount of effort and energy, but it takes too much and it's too much. And so I wanted to basically just have a co-CEO from the jump. And that was been so amazing to be able to. Randy is great at the things that drain me. I'm great at the things that he doesn't love doing. And so sustainable success requires shared leadership, not a singular hero founder who burns himself out. And so that was a pretty big structural shift that I made this time around.
Yeah, and Randy is also an exited founder. I'm going to have to go back to the memory banks here. One Click
Ventures, great memory. Right. Yeah, he sold it to a subsidiary of EssilorLuxottica, which is one of the basically the monopoly in eyewear and glasses. Yeah.
Okay. Besides the two of you, how many folks do you have at the company?
We're reaching 10 people now.
Okay.
Health insurance, benefits, payroll. It's back. It's been amazing. It was just me in November.
Yeah.
Then it was Randy, Elena, and I in December. And now I think we're 9-10 people. I lose track now. And so it's really amazing to see the growth. We work with 25 plus clients now. It's growing faster than any other business that I've ever been involved with. And we've trained literally thousands, of employees in some amazing businesses. And so, yeah, having a lot of fun. I'll tell you that it's a lot more work hours than being an executive coach, but I'm having a lot of fun. And, I'm choosing to work some evenings and weekends because I'm just so fired up about what we're doing.
Okay. Here's what we're going to do. Get out your calendar. We're going to talk again in a year. And I'm going to have a whole new set of questions for you.
I love
about AI. And we'll
it's changing so quickly,
yes,
Mason.
I know.
It's wild. someone has said that you have to be unemployed to keep up with everything that's going on with AI right now. And I thought that was a funny way of putting it.
Well, I'll be in touch in a year.
That sounds great.
In the meantime, some reporters might call you about some related things, but I'll be in touch with you in a year. And thanks so much for explaining this to me. This has really been eye-opening.
Thank you for having me, Mason.
My thanks again to Santiago Jaramillo. And folks, before you get on with the rest of your week, there are several stories in this week's issue of IBJ I want to draw to your attention. First up, deal after deal. Indianapolis-based Eli Lilly and Company is using the fruits of its success from developing blockbuster GLP-1 medicines to build a bridge over a looming patent cliff. Daniel Bradley reports that Lilly so far this year has spent $21 billion to acquire 6 biotech companies and crafted licensing deals worth up to $19 billion. Also in this week's issue, Joey Harris explains how data centers handle the need for large sources of backup power. And Susan Ort takes a deep dive into Trump accounts, the new investment option for new parents. Again, you can find these stories in the latest print edition of IBJ or online at ibj.com. I will say it is quite a bit easier to access all the latest business news and all of IBJ's data on Central Indiana's business community and economy if you're a subscriber. We're running a promotion right now that gives you complete access for $1 per week for 3 months. Just to get a sense of how valuable and original our content is, just go to ibj.com and click on the subscribe button. And thanks again for making time this week for the IBJ podcast. I'm Mason King. Hang in there, everybody. We'll be back again next week.
I'm Tiffany Souter, mom of 4, wife, entrepreneur, and host of the Life of And podcast. For years, I built my life with brute force, a successful business, a growing family, and absolutely zero margin. I was tired, snappy, and felt constantly behind, and I was too afraid to admit it. Everything changed when I stopped trying to do more and started building systems that actually worked for my real life. If you too are craving more peace, more presence, and just more time for you, I'd love for you to join me on the Life of And. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast app or listen at ibjpodcast.com.
Do you want to know what really drives change in Indiana? You won't find it in sound bites, you'll find it in stories. Stories from CEOs, lawyers, coaches, entrepreneurs, and community advocates. That's the IBJ Media Podcast Network. Insightful, local, impactful. Find all of our shows by searching IBJ Media in your podcast app or visit ibjpodcast.com.